Today's video we are going to focus on the front end, which means taking off the front tire, changing the tire, taking the forks off and replacing those fork boots, and then reinstalling everything. Now we're going to move on to removing the front wheel. You'll notice this cap here has four 10mm nuts on it, and then the axle. Now this particular bike only has this cap on this right hand side. A lot of the bikes will have them on both sides, which captures the axle completely. This one's a little different. Got this one on the right hand side, and then the axle actually threads into the left hand fork leg. So keep that in mind if you've got a different style bike. First we're going to loosen these up, which we've actually already done off camera, get them a little loose, and then we will loosen up the axle, which I've already done off camera as well. Now it's unthreaded from the left fork leg. We can actually take this cap off. And if you've got the cap loose enough, you can pull the axle all the way out if you choose to do it that way. Once that's pulled out, you can tilt the bike back. And then drop your front wheel. And a little tip for you, the reason why I actually did the rear first is for stability. So notice we have the front wheel off, and now we don't have to worry about it falling over, falling back, falling forward, any of that. It's nice and secure, and we can take those fork legs out. We're going to start with the right fork leg. We need to loosen up these four 12mm bolts. Don't need to take them all the way out, just loosen them up. Now once you have the four bolts loosened up, top and bottom, you'll see this is kind of like a pinch bolt system. This actually just pinches the fork leg in place. What you'll want to do is get a screwdriver, flathead, give it a little bit of a twist, and you'll see it open up. And you'll just have to work it back and forth in order to get that fork leg off. If you want to remove it super quick, you can take two flathead screwdrivers, put them on either of the caps, inside either of the caps, give them both a pull or twist, and then have somebody push it out on the other end. But since we're going at this alone, we're just going to do it the old-fashioned way. We've already started. Open up the top, wiggling a little bit, open up the bottom, and we should be able to pull it out pretty much now. There you go, one fork leg. Once we have the leg removed from the bike and on the bench, there's a clamp at the top and the bottom. We're going to go ahead and loosen those up. Just a Phillips head screw. Pry the bottom of the boot up, and then slide the boots off, which can be a little bit difficult if you've got a lot of dirt jammed in there, which we did. And then we'll wipe them off and inspect for any leaks. Because remember, I have not checked these out yet, so we may have to replace fork seals. We're going to repeat the process with the left-hand fork leg. The only difference is you need to take off the brake and any hardware associated with that, because otherwise you're going to pull your brake cable. It's not going to be long enough. So take off the caliper, unscrew the bracket, let that hang there, and then pull out the fork leg. And the reason why we're going to do this one first before we actually change the boot on the other one, to make sure this fork does not need maintenance as well. The other fork seems to be fine, but if one of them needs it, I'm going to do both of them. Just like the right hand fork leg, the left hand was in great shape. There was no leaks. The seals look fairly new. I'm not sure if they're original, but I don't see any leaks around them at all. When I initially took the right hand leg off, I thought there was, but it was actually just a bunch of condensation and water just from not leaking out because they had a lot of rocks in there. So now that we've got them all cleaned up, we're going to go ahead and install these new boots. Now these are made by, I think, Daystar. Got them from Rocky Mountain ATV, and they are thick rubber, whereas the old ones were plastic. Now I don't like the fact that they appear to be thicker as far as the width. The material is great, but the width makes it look kind of fat, but much better material. Don't have to worry about them crinkling and all that like the plastic ones. First thing I want to do is install this retaining ring, which is right here. Now I'm not sure if your bike would have these or not. This one does. If you do have an XR250 that doesn't have these, you can certainly put these boots on without it, but it'll make it a lot easier because this gives the bottom something to clamp to instead of just the fork. There's a groove, and there's a groove in the middle of the actual clamp. You just simply snap it on, snap it in place. You can see it's not moving. It spins, but it will not move up and down. And then we'll go ahead and slide the new boot on. Work your way around the bottom of the leg. So I've got the bottom of the boot. I want to have it flush with the bottom of that ring. And you may have to kind of hold it in place. Now you can wire tie this. We're going to use the original clamps. And once we get the boot about where we want it, we'll put the clamp on and then we'll just tighten it up. And this clamps nice and tight. Now once you have the bottom clamp buttoned down where you want it, where you need it, we put the top clamp on. Now this is fit loosely. We can move it around if we need to. The reason being is I don't remember exactly where the boot was before I took it off. So we're going to go ahead and install it back into the bike and then we'll adjust that at that point. Reinstall the fork. It's the exact opposite of the uninstall. Go ahead and slide it through the bottom tube. And once we get to the top tube, go ahead and spread the clamp out a bit and then push your fork into place. Now you want to measure the gap up here on either side. You should have an even gap and go with the manufacturer recommendation. Usually it's a couple millimeter from the top of the clamp. After that, we'll go ahead and tighten all these bolts down to spec and then we'll move on to the tires. Now once you have the forks reinstalled and torqued down to spec, we can address these boots. All you have to do is push them up since we left them loose, put them right to the bottom of the triple clamp. Once you've done that, go ahead and tighten the screw down and you're ready to go. Now that we have those boots installed, it's time to install the front wheel. If you recall, we had this on the left-hand side of the wheel. This is actually for the speedometer, which is broke. This was broke. And essentially what I've done is just remove the bushing out of there because I don't need this part. Now, this actually is supposed to create a seal because that bearing is sealed, but it should have a dust cap on it or a seal on it. This was supposed to act as that. Since it was actually broken, all it was doing was capturing moisture in the wheel. So it didn't really do me any good. So I removed it and it's not dangling there anymore. And we're just going to install the bushing. Before we install anything, we're going to apply some Yamalube to the bushing, the axle, and the bearings. We'll get that applied and we'll move on. Recall when we took the wheel off, I mentioned this cap here that you can leave it on or take it off. Now when you're reinstalling the wheel, it's a lot easier to take it off because you can insert the axle into the wheel without going through the other side and you can lift it up in place. So once you get it set in place, you can go ahead and tighten down the axle to the proper torque setting and then put your cap on and tighten those up to the proper torque setting as well. And then we'll be done with the front brake. Now, I do not have the front caliper installed right now. This makes installing the front wheel a lot easier. You don't have to fiddle with getting that disc between the pads. So once we get this tightened down, we'll reinstall the front brake caliper. Now to install the front caliper, make sure the pads are spread out enough to get it over the actual disc. Somebody did apply the front brake, which I think may have happened in my situation. Go ahead and take your clamp, leave the pads in, and just squeeze it all together. Now once you've done that, go ahead and slide it in place and see how easy it goes into place. I will end up taking these back off because the previous owner does not have the correct hardware in there. Now, one of the first few videos I mentioned that the oil pan screw was stripped or something like that. It is definitely rounded over. So we're going to try some of these grip tight sockets and see if we can get it off. Hopefully the threads are not crossed or anything like that. Now that we've got the socket in place, let's see what happens. It didn't work. Alright, we finally got it out. Those grip tights in this situation were completely useless, so we had to use an easy out. Luckily, this is the original oil pan bolt, so it's not been stripped out, thank God. The threads are not cross-threaded or anything like that. So we've got a brand new one and a new washer to go along with it. We'll go ahead and put that in. Next thing we're going to do is the frame oil bolt. We're going to put a new washer on that. Didn't get a new bolt, but we got a new washer. Should be fine. And then we'll crank that down to 29 foot-pounds. After we replaced the frame washer, the only other thing I did was replace the skid plate. I haven't put any oil in it yet. We're going to wait till the end to do that. But as you can see, we got a lot done in this video. We got the front tire on, which we obviously didn't show. We got the fork boots installed, the new drain plug installed, the new washer for that. skid plate, so quite a bit done in this one. Now these videos aren't quite as in-depth as the old YZ250F videos or the 125 videos because I don't have a lot of work to do on this, and also I'm limited on time. But maybe you can catch something on one of these videos that may show you how to do something, or I could be doing something wrong. That is entirely possible. If you haven't already subscribed and you do like the videos, be sure to smash that bell so you'll get notified of the next video. If you see any of the tools that I use in this video that you'd like to purchase for yourself, be sure to check out the links below the description. I have Amazon links to just about everything in this garage. The woodworking tools, a lot of the hand tools, everything's in there. And as always, thanks for watching.